G'day legends, and I hope that you are having a fantastic weekend and the Sunday blues haven't got you too bad heading into the working week. Now, it is over 40 degrees where I live today and my office is not air conditioned. So I am going to try and keep this short, although you know me, I love yapping on. And I do apologize for that, but it is just the way that I do this. Now, we're going to go over a fair bit of this video. Of course, we're going to look at the maps. That will be probably in the last third. So if you want to skip through to there and not give me my AdSense money from YouTube, go to there. No, that is no problem. Go and do that. We're going to look at drones. We're going to talk about Tucker Carlson, of all people. We're going to look at a feud between both Poland and Ukraine, and then between Zelensky and Zaluzhny as well. We're going over a little bit of everything. So realistically, this war has been very stagnant on the front line for well over a year. From maneuver, armoured assaults, infantry assaults, a little bit of everything. The actual ground movement over the last 12 months has been basically net zero movement. We haven't got an update yet from my trusted sources on how much net change there actually was over January, so we're still waiting on that. Hopefully we'll get that soon to give you an idea, but the movement has been very stagnant. And what we've seen is Russian convoys getting picked apart by FPV drones all the way to Ukraine's promised Wunderwaffen of the Western tanks, the Leopards, piling up in a minefield targeted from drones, artillery, and of course, the mines beneath the dirt. And that's going to continue on as a problem. And I want to go over something that I posted in my Telegram and had a very good response from, and I think is highly relevant to the war. Now, for those unaware, I actually served a number of years in both a light infantry and mechanised battalion in the Australian forces. So I see a lot of criticism about Russia and Ukrainian mechanised manoeuvre warfare. Thing is, tell me what country has developed tactics and standard operating procedures for this with 100-kilometre-hour suicide drones. That is how fast these drones moved. I was in a mechanised infantry battalion, and I can tell you we would have been effed too. There are some real criticisms about spacing and all of that, and we've looked at that some of the convoys are too close, too far, but like with boxing, get hit in the face, all that can go out of the window very quickly. But on the whole, in a million-acre minefield with drones everywhere, tell me your tactic. And this is the thing in this. We have really seen the development of drones in this war. We've seen them used before, but to the extent and the success that Ukraine and Russia use them, absolutely not. And this is absolutely limiting that maneuver warfare. This is the thing with armor. With armor being tanks, APCs, IFVs, infantry fighting vehicles like this, whether it's a Bradley, an M13, a Leopard, a Challenger, a T80, T90, whatever. The whole point is you need to outmaneuver your enemy. They move very quickly, so you can outmaneuver, get behind with this. Drones have just leveled that playing field. A T90 is not a bad tank. It's a very bloody good tank. A Challenger 2 is a very good tank. So is a Leopard. They are fantastic vehicles. They really are. Don't believe what the propaganda tells you. All of those tanks, they are good tanks. And it's a bit of a dick measuring contest of which one is better for. At the end of the day, they are very good tanks. They were all built pre this actually threat of these 100-kilometre-hour or faster bloody drones that can hit them from top down, arse in, front on, whatever. It's unbelievable. The tactics and SOPs have not been developed for this. I served in one of these units working with Abrams, with 113s, all this. We did not have this as one of the things we were taking into consideration. We would have been stuffed as well. Ukraine and Russia, they are learning on the fly with this and taking, of course, huge casualties. This is why we're seeing these maneuver warfare assaults out in the open getting hit. And I think, yeah, okay, we can laugh at that and go, oh, well, that was shit tactics. And what else? What other option actually is there? What tactics has any country actually developed against these systems? And I wholeheartedly believe that actually our tactics, that we're looking over there going, what's working for both Ukraine and Russia against this? And this is why we're not seeing any real movement on the front line in this open territory where you just can't get that maneuver warfare going. And is that actually going to happen further down the line? Well, no, the drones are not getting worse. They're getting significantly better. And this is why, in my opinion, you can't compare the stagnation we're seeing in this war compared to previous wars. Many will point at wars gone past and go, well, it sat on the front line for years and then this happened and then everything collapsed. I just don't believe we're going to see that with everything we're seeing, with how much ISR there is, the use of these drones, and also how people can now see economies, financial outcomes, and better predictors of the future. I just don't think we're going to see this all in one collapse. Like the YouTubers, the bloggers will tell you on either side that there's imminent collapse. They've been telling us there's imminent collapse for years. And I think drones on the forefront of minimizing that maneuver. It's not just hitting them. It's the ISR capability, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance of those drones. Of course, most vehicles are still getting killed by artillery, but that artillery is so much more effective than it has ever been because of what the capability of those drones add back to the artillery, the mortar, whatever line from there. And in my opinion, and I'll go to fight on this, no weapon in the history of warfare, from a bow and arrow to machine gun, has changed warfare this dramatically, this quickly. I can't think of any weapon that's actually changed it that fast. And we're not just talking about drone with a weapon on it. These do far more than people actually think, and far more we're probably not seeing as well. So I personally know guys who have CBRN sensors, so chemical biological sensors, on drones that drop into areas and can transmit back if it picks up anything of gas, biological, whatever going back. Drones can drop mines. They can have, of course, camera, thermal, night vision on them to send back that surveillance to lines, to commanders, whatever, and view as things are going, live feed. And of course, not only can drop in electronic warfare assets, but could potentially have their own electronic warfare assets on board. It's almost impossible to actually combat this. And what is the solution? Well, a solution, or at least defense, will be developed, and they are being developed. But I believe the offensive, as always, offensive capability is developed far faster than defensive. Look at machine guns got developed well before body armor, and what's more effective? Me with a 7.62 machine gun or you with a 8x12 plate on your guts. Still well in front, and it always will be that. But we have some things, like this. Like this has come out from Ukraine, of course, of this drone here with basically a net gun on the bottom of it, and this drone can hit another drone out of the air with the net and is successful here. But still, this is going to have a limited use case. You're going to have to see it and go from there. And it's a little bit like everyone's favorite bodybuilder and actor here. This is me back in an infantry battalion when drones are back in the fold and I get bloody called up to fight. But these drones, they're going to get better, faster, cheaper, more range. It's going to be a very big development on the front line, and it's actually going to give underdogs a massive opportunity in war going forward. In this war, in the beginning, Ukraine was absolutely the underdog, but of taking use of systems like this, absolutely leveled the playing field. And I say this as a Western soldier, when we step into other theatres of war in the future, probably bloody sooner rather than later with how things are going, this is going to be something that we don't have a really good combat for and is absolutely going to be present bloody everywhere. Now, I think the eventual defense to these will be very small air defense systems, say with like a machine gun on it, a small radar, and we'll hit it out of the air, like a Sea-Whiz Phalanx, but on a very, very small scale. But that said, machine gun still has very limited range. You're still going to have to reload it, and the actual amount of these and the effect of, is it going to be able to just take out a full drone swarm? So yeah, that's just my bit on why we're not seeing a lot of these massive maneuver elements. Maybe we saw this at the beginning, but while I've seen so many of those fail, it's not that either side has bad maneuver warfare tactics this late in the war. It's that there's basically nothing to actually develop against. How do we actually go up against this? And this is why any movement we see, any movement anywhere, is going to have severe, massive losses, no matter the tactics, because nothing moves, nothing goes anywhere without being seen by a drone or without being then in range of either a drone or the artillery calling in on that. And as a soldier, that is just absolutely terrifying. Now, we're going to speak about these gains and movements on the front line as Poland's president, Duda, has found himself absolutely in some hot water after being asked if Ukraine can retake Crimea. And his answer was, "It is hard for me to answer that question. I don't know if Ukraine will regain Crimea, but I believe it will regain Donetsk and Luhansk." Now, I think this is a completely reasonable answer given the movements on the front line now that we've seen over the last few years and the technological military strategic problems that come with an operation into Crimea. But nothing will stop the outrage brigades and their keyboards on the internet from calling this out. But for him saying, "I believe Luhansk, Donetsk," we've even spoken about this, but there's going to be a big fight going into Crimea, and he has his doubts about that, which are many, many people do. Maybe they're more silent on it, but many tacticians around the world do have doubts about how that would work, just from a point of where Crimea is and how you actually land and retake this. And of course, the population there will be, a lot against Ukraine as well. And Ukraine hasn't fought in a position yet where the majority or a vast amount of people are not going to be on their side, partisan to what they are doing as well. I think it is realistic to go, there's a big, big uphill battle to go there. Now, he also said that the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia seized in 2014, was a special place also for historical reasons. Because in fact, if we look historically, it was in Russia's hands for most of the time. And as you could probably tell, this went down online like a lead balloon. Now, Crimea was part of Russia from 1783 when the Tsarist Empire annexed it a decade after defeating the Ottoman forces. They held it until 1954 when the Soviet government transferred Crimea from the Russian Soviet Federation of Socialist Republics to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. And then, of course, when we get into more recent history with the collapse of the Soviet Union and then, of course, the Russian invasion in 2014. But Duda never stated that Ukraine does not have the right to liberate these areas, merely the fact that it has been in Russian hands for a long time and it holds significant historical value. And of course, speaking of the strategic value and Russia's will to defend that and how challenging it is going to be to go in and then take that back. And we're going to look at how, as well, Ukraine responded to this. Now, Ukrainian ambassador to Poland, Vasyl Zvach, wrote then this on Twitter, and I'm in the wrong file. This is the one we want. Crimea is Ukraine. It is and will remain. International law, the basics, Russia's temporary occupation of Crimea is a war crime for which it will be punished. The deoccupation of Crimea is our shared task and obligation to the free world. We will do it without a doubt. We believe and work together. And then, because everything has gone really down and Duda absolutely was onslaughted online, this has come out and he, of course, has clarified some things from here. He says, "My actions and position on Russia's brutal aggression against Ukraine have been and are clear from day one." Of course, he's been one of the biggest supporters of Ukraine. Same with Poland. No country has taken on the amount of people, Ukrainians, as Poland has. Russia violates international law, is an aggressor and an occupier. Russia's attack on Ukraine and occupation of internationally recognized territories of Ukraine, including Crimea, is a crime. This war cannot end with Russian victory. Russian imperialism must be stopped, defeated, and blocked for the future. Ukraine must win because this war must be won by the free world. We all stand shoulder to shoulder for a free, sovereign, and independent Ukraine against aggression and brutal imperialism. So it's political speak there. But I do think he meant what he meant, that I believe Ukraine will get these areas back, but Crimea is going to be a challenge. And we know that, militarily speaking, the biggest challenge here is going to be Crimea. And I've so far not seen real evidence that they go down and take this, as well as weapon systems going in, that maybe in the future, maybe the sanctions, unknown. But here and now we look at the map, we can cast doubts on that. And as you know, people online, you can't have a differing opinion from much. Now, in this as well, and this is going to relate back to the topic we spoke about in the beginning, but there are more rumors circulating that General Valery Zaluzhny will be replaced soon, sacked by Zelensky. Now, sources are saying that Zelensky has asked Zaluzhny to step down, and that Zaluzhny refused to step down. Now, one thing for sure, Valery Zaluzhny is incredibly popular, not only internationally, but also in Ukraine. And this could have a huge effect not only on the solidarity of Ukraine, but morale then on the front line. And there's been people speculate as well around Zaluzhny actually challenging Zelensky in leadership in the country as well. Now, we know that Zelensky and Zaluzhny have locked horns before over many topics. And now, I don't know exactly when this started, but it seemed like it really started when Zaluzhny conceded that the counteroffensive had failed to meet expectations, and more recently when Zelensky had opposed Zaluzhny's proposal to call up 500,000 fresh troops. So we're expecting probably something big to come in the next week or so, just more and more reporting, also out of unnamed sources coming from the White House as well, saying we don't want to influence, a sovereign decision like this. Not that the White House or the Pentagon has ever influenced any election around the world of a sovereign state. America would not do that. But we're probably expecting something down the line as well. Now, something very good and interesting to have a read if you've got time is Zaluzhny actually published a 7-page document online, and I'll put a link below, or it'll be very easy to find. And I think this relates both to drone warfare and maneuver warfare as well. Now, we're just going to go over a few little bits that I've highlighted in this because it is pretty long, but it's worth having a read. And this on the official, if you Google Armed Forces of Ukraine and Zaluzhny maybe in the struggle for initiative, it'll come up. But regarding the modern design of military operations in the Russian-Ukrainian war, in the struggle for the initiative, and speaks about almost 80 years separate us from the last battles of the Second World War, which became the basis of the strategic vision of the wars of the late 20th and early 21st centuries, talking about the development of weapon systems in this and where they're developing from here. Now, speaking, our most important task would be adopt a new point of view on the forms of methods of using the defence forces to achieve victory. Talking down here, the main reason for this change in the strategy, forms and methods of the use of troops is, of course, the development of weapons and military equipment, and especially unmanned systems, the use of which has become massive and allows the performance of a wide range of tasks, which is constantly growing. So, of course, these unmanned systems, it's going to get... I believe that this isn't going to be linear. We're like here, and it's going to do this very quickly. Therefore, unmanned systems, along with the new types of weapons, are almost the only tool for getting out of positional military operations, which are time-consuming for Ukraine for a number of reasons. Not only time-consuming, but very heavy losses in this positional operation, what we are seeing. At the same time, in the current situation, there's still a number of factors that are definitely affect the decision to find new forms of defence forces. The unstable political system around Ukraine, which leads to a reduction in military support. And as there is that unstable political situation he talks about, of course, this can lead to a reduction in support. Only today, there's been another, I think, $38 or $39 million then unaccounted for. Now, he says a high probability of Russia provoking a series of conflicts following the example of Israel and Yemen and distracting the main partners from supporting Ukraine. So, of course, we know Iran has had a massive hand in what's happened in Gaza, what's happening to the north of Israel, and, of course, then in Yemen as well. We know the IRGC has a hand in that, and we know Iran and Russia are very close as well. And it wouldn't be a long bow to draw to say Russia's had some hand in this as well. That absolutely distracts the partners away from supporting Ukraine further, opening up more war. The exhaustion of our partners' stocks of missiles and ammunition for artillery and anti-aircraft defence due to the high intensity of hostilities in Ukraine and the impossibility of their rapid production against the background of a global shortage of gunpowder. So speaking about the exhaustion there, that not only is there a bloody shortage of the systems, but it's impossible to then make the amount as well. Of course, with opening up other fronts in, say, the Middle East. Insufficient effectiveness of the sanctions policy, as a result of which the capabilities of the defence industrial complex are deployed in Russia and the states that are its partners, which allows at least successfully conducting a positional war of attrition. The sanctions against Russia, yeah, they've had an effect, but nowhere near the effect people thought they would have. And of course, successfully conducting a positional war of attrition, that then it's just become a war of attrition, and Russia can continue this war for a very long time. People don't know how quickly Russia can actually develop a lot of these systems, and many say it's actually in Russia's favor to push this war further and further as they can make their own domestic product, that Ukraine cannot fill its own requirements with its own domestic product, that Russia want to draw this war out, see Western support drop, and then they will have a win on the battlefield. And Zelensky only today has spoken about that Ukraine really, really needs to get off its reliance on Western equipment and really focus on its own domestic equipment. We've spoken about this is absolutely the best way for Ukraine continuing this fight onwards, as we know this isn't going to be wrapped up in a year, maybe even 2 or 3. The enemy's significant advantage in mobilizing human resources and the inability of state institutions in Ukraine to improve the state of staffing of the defense forces without the use of unpopular measures. Right there, I think that's a little stab. It may be his boss about calling up another 500,000 soldiers. But we know that Russia has just more human resource. The imperfection of the regulatory and legal framework governing the defence industrial complex in our country and the partial monopolisation of the industry leads to difficulties in the production of domestic ammunition, as a result of which Ukraine's dependence on supplies of allies deepens. And like he spoke about, he speaks, they really need to get away from that and have their own domestic indigenous for being built there. Now, almost the main option for gaining an advantage is the mastery of the entire arsenal of relatively cheap, newest and extremely effective means that are rapidly developing. Of course, drones. It is the attempt to take advantage of the achievements of progress in the development and latest technologies that will allow us to win the scientific, technological and tactical battle, and will lead not only to the unconditional victory, but also the saving and conservation of resources by both Ukraine and its partners. And there is a concern in the West about how many weapons are actually being used and how quickly they're being used compared to the replacement if a wider war was also to open. We do know, even in the USSR, that Ukraine really did lead a lot of the science and technical aspects, hence why a lot of the tank factories, whatever, ended up in Ukraine. So they absolutely have the ability to do this, but like he speaks about, the monopolization of this can absolutely have a big effect on how that actually gets then developed. The need to significantly increase the capability of unmanned systems and other modern technological systems to positively influence the course of hostility prompts, as a result, the search and new forms and methods of application, which in turn will definitely affect the structure of both the armed forces and other constituent forces' defense of Ukraine. These improve the command of situational awareness, round-the-clock service, provision of intelligence information, and inflicting precise and highly accurate strikes on the enemy. So, of course, direct strike, ISR, this all really comes under ISR, but of course, round-the-clock service that can actually then be used at night. So it's an interesting article if you'd actually like to go over it and have a look. Now, something else that has just thrown people into a bloody frenzy. I like when people are thrown into a frenzy. This day and age, I'm like, if you just type and shit on Twitter, I'm like, well, you're just bloody basking in your own fucking anger at home. Is that Tucker Carlson has been seen in Moscow, and many are saying that he is going to interview President Putin of Russia. Now, here is Tucker seen apparently at the Russian ballet and here in Moscow at the airport as well. Now, there's no confirmation on this, but we have heard before that Tucker did want to speak to President Putin and was not allowed to go last time by America, but somehow maybe this time has made it work. And I see nothing intrinsically wrong with this. As someone who interviews myself, I think I come from a non-biased point of view in my interviews, and I've spoken to both Russian and Ukrainian and Western soldiers on a large scale. I see nothing intrinsically wrong with this, although people will say that this is just spreading propaganda and misinformation. Now, of course, Tucker is probably the biggest journalist in the world as far as reach, and in bed with Elon Musk on Twitter. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. But I am sure that in 5 years, we will then see this episode come down at some point on the JRE. Now, we have done most of the stuff. Now, here is where you guys are wanting to see. Of course, we're going to go over the maps, as there has been some interesting developments and some interesting claims as well. So, of course, here we have Ukraine and the capital of Kyiv, the red areas occupied since 2022, and the purple since 2014. Of course, this being Crimea, where Doodle was talking about, and Donetsk, Luhansk in here, saying that they will clear all of this, but he was unsure about Crimea. Now, we're going to come down because there's a lot of speculation about here in Krinky. Now, people are saying that Ukraine has got somewhere between 300 meters and a kilometer. So what's that? 900 feet to 3,000 feet if you speak in freedom units, something like that. But this map isn't showing anything. If anything, it actually shows over the past few days, Russia has gained some territory in here. And this map was updated not that long ago. So somewhat unsure, but I'm sure one of the maps will update. I looked deep to try and find some geolocation or whatever these accounts were speaking about, saying that both Russian and Ukrainian sources confirmed that there was an advancement here, but I can't find really much of that. So maybe just hold out on what is happening there. But we have spoken about this area and how important holding that is for Ukraine, although it is very difficult having to cross over here. But we do know there will be more barge sort of bridge systems donated from the west to Ukraine soon. Now, Natalia Hermaniuk, who's the spokesman of Ukraine's Southern Operational Command, of course, this area, has said on TV on the 3rd that over 70,000 Russian personnel are currently stationed on the east bank of the Dnipro River in Kherson and Zap Oblast. So, of course, this is Kherson and Zap Oblast, 70,000 soldiers, Russian soldiers in this area. Of course, they're not all going to be frontline combat soldiers. A lot of them are going to be, but definitely not all of them. And, of course, people go, why? This is a very critical area for Russia. If this gets cut off, the leading down into Crimea, cutting off soldiers, that's why they've deployed a hell of a lot of people in here. And it was very, very obvious in Ukraine's offensive last year that this is in the south exactly where they were trying to push, was to get down somewhere in Orokhiv, through here, through Melitopol, and through here. And, of course, it's Zap, Kherson Oblast. So I can see exactly why there's been a lot of soldiers deployed into there. But we haven't seen any changes all the way up until we come south of Orokhiv, near Robotny here, where Ukraine had some success in its counteroffensive operation. And we do see just over the past few days that it does look like Russia has made some positions in there. Marginal gains, not that much. And we don't have anything backing that up on Surak. But when it is deep state maps showing Russian gains, we tend to say, well, that probably happened because it's against, I guess, their biases that we see. Nothing through Starmorsky, although we did see movement in Prudotny last week. Not seeing it at the moment. Nothing in Vuhledar. Not much in Novomyolivka. If you have a look here, we're not seeing any change here. There's a lot of speculation about here and Mariinka as well. But personally, we're not seeing it. Avdiivka, we do see some major shifts, and we'll look at Suryak here as well. And, of course, a geolocation of some footage. Also, a look down at the time, it's getting hot in here. We've been going for a while, but let's go from the first. We're going to be looking just out to the west of Pisky here. We do see an increase in grey zone, so there was definitely a positional change there. But the biggest change we see is just to the north of Avdiivka, near Vasily here. We do see that Russia did make a fair bit of ground, an extension southwards, but of course on the north of Avdiivka, extending its control there of ground. And let's have a look at where this is actually entered on positions here too, if this eventually loads. So it is entering right on then these outskirts on the first houses into Avdiivka, and this is a big step. So if we go from, well, let's go back and let's measure from here to about here. Let's go, that's about 2Ks. That is a fair jump up in positions. So of course, this area here being grey, this probably won't hold for very long. Just seeing of the actual gap here and ability to hold is going to be probably gone in the next couple of days. And it is really this first entering on the north of Avdiivka as that really grips down on it. That is a large movement. And then up to today, we haven't seen much change. So let's then have a look at Suryak maps and see where this compares. And if you ask me, the movement between Suryak, Deep State, this to me looks bang on similar. Look at where this lake is here in line. Very, very similar. And saying that Ukraine has had to go out and around here. Of course, you're getting caught in this cauldron. So Russia has made a movement there. And then let's look at what then Suryak has to say. Now, Suryak also is saying that Russia had an advancement down near Opitny here as well. I saw claims that Russia has lost a lot of territory here as well, and I'll show you the footage these claims came from. Now, I can't show you this footage in whole, but it will be on my Telegram if you'd like. It is then in this video here. This is from a Russian drone striking Ukrainian targets here. But we know if Ukrainians are there, therefore that ground isn't being held. This is then the geolocation of where this is. And then, of course, I've got it on this map down to the south of Avdiivka in this area. So if we take where this large intersection is and this bendy road coming through, we're talking large intersection, bendy road right in here. So this is in Ukrainian-held territory, but some were saying that Russia had actually held up through here. So that has proven that wrong, but it is showing in line with Deep State and Syriac at the moment as well. So let's bring this back up, and this is where it was showing. So that, of course, that position is right here. We do know that at least when that footage was published, which we believe yesterday, that Ukraine was right in these positions here, but we can never be, I guess, 100% clear. Now, this description will be from the map we saw up in the north and, of course, this movement on the south. The situation on Avdiivka front during the last 3 days, significant gains were made by the Russian army in the northern axis of the city, where troops took control over most of the Ivashko Dasha and reached this street. As a result, Ukrainian army withdrew from the tree lines north of this quarry, which should be taken in the following days. Like we said, it's just a cauldron in there. On the other hand, from the southern axis, Russian forces advanced east of Pitny towards the former air defense missile battalion. The fight in this area hasn't stopped in a week as Ukrainian forces continue attacking the positions of Russian troops in the ruins of the airbase. Meanwhile, Russian artillery is pounding the entire area until the railway. So this through here, this is, of course, where the railway is, and that is what the artillery systems are hitting hard. And this area in here, the amount, just the distance that where things are from each other, the amount of fire from not only heavy machine gun, light machine gun, and artillery mortars will be huge in here as well. It's turning into the situation we then saw in Bakhmut. Now let's have a look at the last bit of Syriac. Said the Battle of Avdiivka is close to enter in a new stage. The Russian army officially entered the city of Avdiivka from the north, so squeezing on the east and the north with a pincer movement from the two axes. The pressure over Ukrainian army in Avdiivka will continue to increase until troops will be forced to abandon the positions. The northern axis will play the main role to cut the last supply routes, 1.6 k's to the other side of the city, towards the southern neighbours, leaving the coke plant as the last position to be taken in this battle that might last some weeks or more at least. And this is going to take a long time. But what they're saying is this northern axis, they're trying to get these supply routes down into the east cut. Now, the south will have to have an effect here as well. Soldier X, he did spoke about as well, that the supply routes in and out of Avdiivka are already very limited as is. And just the distance here, yeah, we know that they would be limited as well. Russia has got some of the high ground on the east where it has entered Avdiivka, and it will be more and more increasingly difficult with Russia moving down into here, maybe not even moving, but more fire support down into here to continue supplying the guys who are down in here fighting off this east to west movement of Russia. But that said, like Bakhmut, I'm sure that a hell of a lot of YouTubers like me were making videos going, it's going to collapse the next day, and it will hold for months and months and months and continue on the fight. But otherwise, up and down the front line, realistically, we haven't seen really any other major shifts or changes. That's it, footage of the north. I thought I did miss on. But legends, hope you had a great weekend. Sorry this was long. I promised it was going to be bloody shorter. Sorry. Look after yourselves. Have a great week, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. I'm sorry for missing yesterday, but I was busy. Okay, see ya.